beautiful people, and welcome. This is part 2 of your review video for solving quadratic equations. In this video, we are going to be discussing the quadratic formula. Now, what is the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula gives you the values of x for your equation. Now, we typically want to use the quadratic formula when we cannot use any other method, since it is plugging and chugging and does require sometimes a calculator. So we have negative b, make sure b is in a bubble, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now all of this is inside the square root, and then all of that gets divided by 2 times a. Now what is your a, b, and c? Where do those come from? So these come from your equation. So step number 1 in your equation, make sure everything is onto one side and equaling 0. So I have n squared plus 12n, and I'm going to subtract 85 both sides. So that way I have my equation equal to 0. Once your equation is equal to 0, you're going to look at the numbers in front of each term. Now remember, if there is no number for your leading coefficient, that number is 1. So this is your A, this number is your B, and this number is your C. So how do we do it with the quadratic formula? Rewrite the quadratic formula, but write it a little bit bigger than usual because you want to leave spaces in here so you can put in your values. So I left all of these parentheses open. So what do we have? Well, we have B here, we have B here, we have A here, C here, and an A here. So I'm going to go back into my equation and find out what the value of B is, and this is a positive 12. I'm going to find out what the value of A is, which is 1, the value of C, which is a negative 85. Make sure you take the symbol with it, and then A is 1. Work inside the square root first. So don't do anything else. I'm just going to copy everything else. So inside the square root, this is where, again, you may need a calculator. I got 12 squared, which is 144, minus 4 times 1 times negative 85 is a negative 340. Notice that we have 2 negatives. That's okay, 2 negatives. You can circle it, make it into a positive. So now on the next step, I have x is equal to negative 12 plus or minus the square root. Notice how my square root is getting smaller and smaller. 144 plus 340, that gives me 484, divided by, and I'm going to simplify the denominator here just because it's 2 times 1, and 2 times 1 is just 2. Looking at the square root of 484, that gives me 22. So I'm going to say negative 12 plus or minus this. We don't need the square root anymore because the square root of 484 is 22. So I'm just going to write 22 here. All of this is being divided by 2. Now, here is where you need to split this up into 2 sections. I'm going to put a little bubble around it. You need to do a positive and a negative version of this. Notice that you have a plus or a minus because we did have a square root. Remember, anytime you have a square root, you need a plus or minus. So we have negative 12 plus 22 divided by 2, and we have negative 12 minus 22 divided by 2. One of them is a plus, one of them is a minus. So let's solve this. Negative 12 plus 22 divided by 2. I just used a calculator, and that's equal to 5. I'm going to put a box around it. Negative 12 minus 22 divided by 2, and that gives me a negative 17. Again, where am I getting these numbers from? My calculator. I just typed this in, and pressed enter. So what does this mean? That means this is your x value and this is your x value that makes the equation true. Oh, I don't know why I'm doing x equals 5. X equals negative 17. So how would your answer look? I'm going to bring this paper back up. So x, oh, I think I did x instead of n, but that's okay. So we'll bring it back up. My variable was n, so n is equal to 5 and negative 17. Typically, you want to put the negative number first, but that's okay. Let's try to do that one more time. Step number 1, notice that this number is not connected with the rest of the equation, so we're going to add 6 to both sides, making this 0. And here I have 5n squared minus 12n plus 6. Let's label all of our a's, b's, make sure to take the symbol with it, and c's. Rewrite your quadratic formula. X, or n in this case, is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that divided by 2a. Okay, this is b, a, c, a. What are our numbers? B here is a negative 12, negative 12. A is 5, C is 6, and then this A is 5. Okay, let's go ahead and start simplifying. Negative times a negative. Two negatives make a positive, so now I have 12 plus or minus. Inside the square root, I have negative 12. Make sure negative 12 is in parentheses in your calculator, because if it is not, it will give you the wrong answer. Minus 4 times 5 times 6, that is 120, divided by 2 times 5 is 10. 144 minus 120 gives me 24 divided by 10. Taking the square root of 24 gives me, it does not give me a pretty number. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't know you didn't see. So 24 square rooted is not a pretty number, so we want to simplify it. So let's simplify it to 12 plus or minus. Inside the radical, we can see if we can pull something out, because I think 4 times 6 is 24. So that means I can rewrite it as, what can I rewrite it? Square root of 4 times the square root of 6. Again, we can do this because of multiplication. So 12 plus or minus, what's the square root of 4? 2. Square root of 6, still can't do it, and you can't simplify it, so we have just leftover square root of 6. Now we're going to split this up into 2. One of them is going to be positive, one of them is going to be negative. So let's do 12 plus 2 times the square root of 6 divided by 10. And here is 12 minus 2 times the square root of 6 divided by 10. And I'm looking to see if there's anything that can be simplified, if there's something that can be pulled out. Sometimes what you'll see happen when you're dealing with icky numbers like this is you're going to see the denominator being divided by every single term. What I mean by that is 12 divided by 10 plus 2 root 6 divided by 10. Here, same thing, 12 divided by 10 minus 2 root 6 divided by 10. And the reason we do that is because maybe there is something that can be simplified. We just can't simplify it in the way that it looks right now, so we change the way it looks. Still equals the same thing, it just looks different. So now I have 12 divided by 10, and that can be simplified to 6/5. And then 2 divided by 10 can be simplified to 1/5. We still can't do anything with that square root of 2. That stays. So what does that mean? That means our variable n is equal to, I have 6/5 plus 1 times the square root of 6 divided by 5, and 6/5 minus 1 times square root of 6 is square root of 6 divided by 5. These two are our answers. Now, I do want to mention one thing, that if the discriminant, if you remember what this discriminant is, the thing inside your square root, so b squared minus 4ac, this is your discriminant. This tells you how many solutions you will have. It does not tell you what the solutions are, but it does tell you how many solutions there are. If this equals to 0, that means you have one solution. If this is a positive number, then that equals 2 solutions. And if it equals a negative number, that equals no solutions. All right, beautiful people, that is it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.